Good morning, everyone. Thank you for these lovely two songs. Nice to have Kathleen back leading us and singing. This morning we're continuing with our reflections on the Mundaka Upanishad. This is part 4. But before we start, I want to remind everyone that we have a very special event directly following this. That Dr. Malloy Das has flown all the way from Southern California to be with us. Many of you read the first book that he wrote on Swami Swahananda. Dr. Das was not only his doctor and his disciple and benefactor, but a very dear, close friend and companion with Swami Swahananda. So he wrote a very beautiful book earlier, and then last year finished the second book of reminiscences of Swami Swahananda. And so many of people here knew him, and he was such a force to start our center. And many of his disciples are here, and so it's a very nice book of compilation of reminiscences by different disciples of Swami Swahananda. So he'll do a book signing. After this, we have the books on the table out front, and then he requested to sponsor lunch for everyone. So we have a full lunch for everyone, so please, after he'll speak a little bit, we'll have the book signing, and then we'll all go to the basement for lunch. The last session we had on the Mundaka Upanishad, we finished the second section, and now we get to one of the most important verses of this Upanishad, which is also found in other Upanishads, and is really one of the most glorious verses, one of the most important, one of the most beautiful verses. It's also Shvetashvatara Upanishad and Katha Upanishad, at least maybe others, I don't know, but at least in those two. Na tatra soyo bhati, na chandra tarakam, naima vidyato bhanti kutoyam agnihi. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvam idam vibhati. It's a verse that is very well known. If you attend any of these bhandaras in India, at least North India, before Brahmarpanam, they'll chant the complete Gita chapter 15, and then they'll recite this verse, and then Brahmarpanam. So anyhow, it's a very beautiful and very important verse. There the sun does not shine, nor the moon, nor the stars. Lightning does not shine. What to speak of this mortal fire? That shining, everything shines after it. Through his light, all this shines in all its diversity. Now, we have lots of pronouns, unreferenced pronouns. In the Upanishads we've seen that very often we'll simply have tat, that. We won't have the word Brahman or anything like that, or sat, existence. So we have a lot of that with this, all of this tasyas and tatras here and there, and whether it's him or it, we can't even say that much. And we have several versions of the word meaning to shine, bha. We have bhati, vibhati, anubhati, different with little preverbs added to them, which give very subtle changes in the meaning. So I want to really spend this whole session on this one verse, and to try to figure out who we're talking about and what is this there, and what are the differences in the different types of shining that we're talking about. This idea of illumination. And how does this shining of this ultimate reality take place where there's no sun or moon or stars or anything else. Yeah. So this is a very mystical type of, very transcendental type of idea and verse that we have here. Anyhow, we assume this tat will mean Brahman or Atman. In the Upanishad, we find that Brahman and Atman are more or less the same with a different context. Same ultimate reality. If we're thinking of the cosmic aspect, we use the term Brahman. The individual aspect, we use the term Atman. But Ayam Atma Brahma, there's the ultimate truth that these two are one and the same. And we find that we're talking about something which transcends any ordinary type of light. So when it says, there the sun shines not, we're not talking about any location. We're talking about in Brahman itself, in that ultimate reality. In the depths of our heart, we may say that there's light there. Yeah, but it's not the light, ordinary type of light. Will be the distinction that we have. Yes, Brahman is light itself. That's why everything is bhati, everything is shining. But not this ordinary type of light that we know, the sun and the moon and the stars. So we'll find that this is the light that's necessary for everything. It's not the physical light. This physical light is necessary in order to see external objects, but unless that interior light is there, then there will be no seeing, there will be no experiencing of anything. So we're talking about something that is really the light of consciousness, we can say. And we'll find that the other types of light, the way that we experience the world, is only as a consequence, anubhati, only as a consequence of that light. Because that light shines, then this interior light, then we can experience everything. And then we have vibhati, that this light will be responsible also for the tremendous variety that we have. So anu means to follow, vi usually means with variety. So we'll see that this light of Brahman, it allows everything to be seen in all of its tremendous manifoldness, and at the same time will be the source of everything. So all of these ideas are contained in this very one beautiful verse. One nice way of understanding this distinction between ordinary seeing, ordinary light, and this light of consciousness can be found in a dialogue between Yajnavalkya and King Janaka in Brihad Upanishad. This is 4:3, verses 1 through 6. And Janaka raises a question. He asked Yajnavalkya, Kim Jyotir ayam purushaha? A very unusual question. What serves as the light for a person? Kim Jyoti. So we have a person. What is the light by which somebody sees? Huh? We won't ordinarily ask that type of question, but Yajnavalkya replies, the sun serves as the light for a person. It is through the light of the sun that one sits, goes out, works, and returns. Now, the question, Janaka is asking this question, it's kind of, the Socratic dialogue, that Socrates gives the teaching, but he does it by asking one question after another, so that the pupil will come up with the right answer at the end. So the Janaka is really the star of the Upanishads. So then he'll say, but what about when the sun has set? Then what is the light for a person? So he says, it is the light of the moon. And when both have set, the light of fire. And when the sun and moon have both set, the stars and the fire has gone out, then what serves as the light for a person? And we get a very interesting answer here. Speech serves as a light. So if it's completely dark and somebody yells, this way, come this way, then it's providing a light for us, in a sense, that we know what direction to go in by hearing the speech. And when the sun and moon have set, the fire has gone out, and speech has stopped, what serves as the light for a person? Then we get the real answer. The self serves as his light. It is through the light of the self that he sits, goes out, works, and returns. And then we understand that it's through the light of the self, even when the sun is shining and the moon, that without the light of the self, there won't be any coming and going, there won't be any experience or anything. But how beautifully this dialogue takes us from the most obvious answer, well, the light is on in the room, that's why I can see. But when the light is off, when it's completely dark, what is that light by which we see even darkness? The light of the self. So we find that this idea of light, and especially sun, becomes one of the most important symbols or metaphors for Brahman itself. And we find again that this beautiful paradox of explaining Brahman as not being ordinary light and yet being light. So, no tattva soyabhati, it's that place where the sun doesn't shine at all, and yet it shines. It shines in a way that's completely different from any physical type of light, completely the transcendent source of consciousness itself. So this is that theme that we find of using the sun. Is very common throughout the Vedantic literature, and this idea of paradox is also very common. For example, in Gita, we have these beautiful verses that in chapter 13, that Brahman, devoid of all senses and yet sees through all senses, has no hands or feet, yet acts and walks on all hands and feet. We have this type of, because of the transcendent aspect and the immanent aspect. Transcendent aspect beyond all of that. Immanent, yes, he's seeing through our eyes, that Brahman is walking on our feet. This is that idea that Brahman is alone dwelling within as the real self of each and every individual. So this points to these two different aspects, that Brahman dwelling within everything and Brahman being untouched by everything. It's a type of paradox. Most religious thought, spiritual thought, has to be expressed in terms of paradox, because it transcends ordinary logic. And it's something to be felt, that these two aspects can exist that to the ordinary mind will be contradictory, but we see that they're not contradictory. That this is the nature of the absolute reality, that it's both with form, without form, both inactive beyond everything, and yet the source of everything. All of these coexist in this ultimate reality. So we'll find the same idea with regard to light, especially with regard to the sun. The light of the sun is used for many reasons. One is that the sun is self-luminous. There's no second light which we need in order to see the sun. We see the sun by its own light. If we compare it to the light of the moon, this will be a reflected light. The moon has no light of its own. So every other light is said to be borrowed from this Brahman itself. That this is the ultimate source of everything. So Swayam Prakasha, that self-luminous, when we think of consciousness, if we think that every thought requires a witness, and if we say that even that witness requires another witness, then we get this infinite regress. There's no end to that. There has to be one absolute ground, one absolute reality that doesn't require anything else for its explanation. Everything else has to have a cause. They use this expression, the causeless cause. Even the ancient Greek philosophers used that expression, that we have to come to a ground that will support everything. We can't keep saying that requires another ground, another ground, another ground. There has to be something absolute in order to explain existence itself. So we find this idea of the sun, self-luminous sun, providing light for everything, and by which it itself is seen. The sun becomes the most important image, the most important mantra that we have in the whole Vedic tradition, Gayatri mantra. And this Gayatri mantra involves really, even literally going out when the sun is directly above, or when the sun rises and the sun falls, the three different Sandhya periods, and the type of worship of the sun as a symbol of Brahman itself. And that this Brahman, we pray, will inspire us. And it's something adorable, something to be worshipped. So again, this interplay between that which is completely impersonal and transcendent, and that which is nearest and dearest to us. I like the image of the sun for another reason. Sun is the source of light, not just light, but of life. With animal life, plant life. Plant life can't live without the sun. And the sun provides warmth. If we didn't have the warmth of the sun, we couldn't survive. So it's not just light, it provides so many other things. And when we see in the Upanishads, the way Brahman is spoken of is that it's also prana, it's also life. It's not such a strict doctrine that it has to be thought of only as pure consciousness. The philosophers will explain it that way, but in the Upanishads, is almost a living, breathing reality, which is the source of everything. So even life itself, just as the sun provides all of these secondary things, not just light, that animal life will die without the sun. This plant life. This is how they, what is it? Photosynthesis. How they convert the rays of the sun into food for themselves. And without food, without plants being grown, that we won't be able to survive also. So we find this idea of the sun and the brilliance of the sun giving us a slight understanding of the brilliance of Brahman. We have that beautiful image of Arjuna trying to explain to Sri Krishna what this vision of the universal form is like for him. And one of the things he says, if 1,000 suns were to appear in the sky at the same time, their splendor would be like the splendor of that mighty being which I have just seen. He gets the vision of the universal form. This is also the transcendent Brahman, but also manifest as the whole universe. So this comparison of consciousness with the sun is philosophically as well as experientially helpful, because many people, they have some vision, some experience with light. We know about Swamiji when he was a boy, Narendra. Thakur asked him one time, that how do you fall asleep? And he said, I close my eyes and I see a light, I see it grow and become vast and explode, and then I fall asleep. He thought everybody fell asleep that way. But this will be the experience of many, that the vision of Brahman will just be like this tremendous light that will illumine everything. So this is why we have this tremendous emphasis. Don't think that we're talking about the real sun and that type of light, but this is the best metaphor that we have, and that it's something that transcends sun, moon, stars, and all of that, but is understood as light because it's through that we experience everything. So it's kind of that interior light, you can say. If we go into a cave and it's completely dark, can we see the darkness? Yeah, we experience in darkness without any light whatsoever. How do we experience the darkness? Through the light of the self. We have that awareness, and just to show how completely different it is from this physical type of light that we talk about. So this light manifests within as the witness. It's the witness of everything. It's the source of everything. It's that pure consciousness itself. But when functioning within, it becomes that which is aware of everything. It becomes the witness of everything. So this, of course, is closely tied in with this doctrine of the 3 states of consciousness. We've gone through this many times, especially with the Mundaka Upanishad, that things in this external world, we see it with the external light and the light of the self within. When we're in the dream state, what is the light by which we observe the dream? There's also no real physical light. The objects are projected objects from the mind, and yet we need that light of consciousness. Now, when we get to the dreamless sleep state, then is there any light of consciousness there? In that state where there's no dream, there's no experience of any, there's only this abhava, only some type of absence of every positive type of experience, that light of consciousness is there, but nothing for it to observe, nothing particular for it to observe. If it weren't there, then we wouldn't feel this pull to go to sleep. You wouldn't feel refreshed. We wouldn't feel that we had slept. We wake up in the morning, we know that we've slept, and we know that there was a long period where we were unaware of anything. So we say, I slept very happily, I didn't know anything at all. So the philosophers analyze that this consciousness is unchanging. It's the light that never goes off. When we say someone is unconscious, that means that the mind may not be functioning, senses may not be functioning. Mind may be functioning without the senses, it may be internal, or there may be nothing going on at that time. Maybe coma state or anesthesia state. Consciousness is there observing. And when we wake up, we understand I am that consciousness. It's not that somebody else was watching me, because I have that feeling, I slept very well. So it's both an I and a thou. There's no real personality to that consciousness. In conjunction with the mind, then we say I. If we think of it as the source of the universe, then we say thou. Then we say the Brahman itself, Brahman or Atman. So yeah, it's very interesting to analyze. What is this pull to sleep? It's not just for the physical body is tired. That there's a period without any anxiety, there's a period without any worry, without any thought, nothing. Almost going back to the womb, that type of experience that we experience. We may not know that we're experiencing it exactly because there's no individual I consciousness at that time. But the pull will be there afterwards. We'll feel that something is telling us that you were very comfortable, you were very happy in that state. That's the dreamless sleep state. So the philosophers were really very intuitive when it came to things like this. In the West, the dream state has always been analyzed in psychological terms. Content of the dream. What does that tell us about our hidden desires and all of that? In Vedanta, it was always that metaphysical aspect. Very, very interesting, at least to me. Now, in the state of samadhi also, the mind is not functioning in any ordinary type of way. If anything, the mind has become merged in Brahman, but there's no ordinary type of awareness that we know of, and yet illumination takes place. When the mind comes back to a more normal type of understanding, then we realize something has happened to us which has completely transformed us and has brought a type of bliss that we never understood before. Anyhow, so this is how they analyze that this is the light which is always shining. This light of consciousness, like the sun. The sun is always shining. We may say, well, what about nighttime? We're simply on the wrong side of the earth then. Yeah, but the sun is always shining. So this state of samadhi, what has happened to the mind at that time? Mind has more or less merged in Brahman itself. So we can say that being merged in Brahman and being a knower of Brahman and being Brahman are all one and the same. At that time, it really is Brahman alone. So what does it mean for Brahman to be Brahman, and what does it mean for us to become Brahman? Brahma bhuya kalpate. We have these different versions. One is fit for becoming Brahman. There's no distinction. There's no distinction. There's a beautiful final verse in chapter 2 of the Gita. It says, Esha Brahmi Sthitihi. This is what it means to be in that state, that Brahman state. That the samadhi, when we enter into that state, then there's no distinction. There's nothing there but Brahman itself. Can I say I am Brahman? Not in that state. When I come down, I can say it. But it is I. It's not that it's happening to somebody else. This is, again, that paradox that we have, and it's so hard to put these things into language. So this is also why when Swamiji writes his beautiful hymn of Samadhi, he bases that hymn on this one verse, this natatra soyo bhati, when he says, nahi surjo, nahi jyoti, that there's no sun, there's no light, all of that. He starts out the same way. Lo, the sun is not, nor the comely moon, all light extinct. Because it's a light that transcends this ordinary type of light. So, when we read in Mundaka Upanishad that there, tatra, there the sun does not shine, it doesn't mean that everything is darkness. It means that light is not this earthly type of light, and it shines even in the darkness. One of my favorite Bengali songs is that Nirbir Antharema, Ruparashi, that in dense darkness, mother, thy formless beauty sparkles. See, I love this idea, it's a paradox. It's dense darkness. Now, how can we see something sparkling, especially when there's no form? In dense darkness, your formless beauty sparkles. Therefore, the yogis meditate in a deep forest cave where there's no light whatsoever, because they are in touch with that inner light which has nothing physical. We compare it to the sun, and yet it's so different from the sun that even in dense darkness, that we have the vision of Divine Mother, and then even that formless aspect, and then it'll shine for us. She'll reveal herself that way. So this shining will be something internal. It'll shine as that internal light which lights up our senses and our mind. This is the witness that sees everything. Whether we're sleeping, whether we're awake, whether we're dreaming, it sees everything, and yet transcends everything. It doesn't require anything. It doesn't require our mind. It doesn't require our senses or anything. The sun doesn't need anything to illumine. It remains the sun. Suppose everything else is gone, the sun will remain as the sun. It doesn't require anything. So it is transcendent, and yet it participates in everything, the cause of everything. So this is the basic meaning of this first line, na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra taragam, not even this fire and lightning and all of these other things. This light of Brahman is something completely different. It belongs to a whole different realm of reality than this other type of light that we know. So we experience it as light. This is a metaphor for we experience awareness. We experience consciousness, this feeling of being the witness. This is something that we just have to feel. There's no real way of explaining this. And that's we're a little bit reflective and know that every word that I'm saying, I'm also hearing myself say. And not just hearing with the ears. That every thought that we have, we know that we have that thought. This is the nature of the witness that doesn't judge anything, that doesn't contribute anything. Just pure awareness, which allows us to be aware. We do the judging, that's back on the mind level, but not on this consciousness level. Then we get to the second line, this distinction between the light of Brahman in its pure form as representing the essence of consciousness, and the secondary type of form as manifested in the world. So we have in the beginning this transcendent. Now we get this immanent, manifest in the world, forming the essential feature of what we call the jivatman, or the individual soul. In Vedanta, we have different ways of understanding the individual soul, that either this individual soul can lose its individuality, or it never had any real individuality. But for us, this is the feeling of being an individual, of being a person. So this personal feeling, this feeling that I am aware of things, this is that anubhati, that consciousness of Brahman gets reduplicated somehow within. That because of that sun, transcendent sun, that sun in the sky, all of the reflected sun can be there. And we can understand each individual as a reflected sun. This is that concept, or this doctrine, Pratibhimbavada. Sri Ramakrishna uses this illustration over and over and over again. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we have that illustration that the individual is like a clay pot filled with water. The pot itself is like this physical body. The water is like the mind, or the internal organ, mind and buddhi, senses and everything. And the sun, reflected in that, will give us the feeling of individuality. So each and every one of us will feel that the source of my individual awareness is that reflected sun. And it's very, very natural for us to think that the mind is the source of awareness. We only see the reflected sun if we don't see the real sun. Say we're standing here and the sun is behind us or above us, and we never look up. We're not allowed to look up. We have to look, and we only see the reflected sun. We'll think it belongs to the water. This is that false identification of consciousness with mind. We'll think it belongs to the water, but in a sense it does. And just like we talk about moonlight. The moonlight belongs to the moon, but it's really sunlight. There's no such thing as moonlight. It's just the reflected light of the sun. Now this is also interesting because the word for moon and the word for mind are cognates. They've always been throughout history, even with other languages. This Luna means moon, and lunatic. It means somebody whose mind is a little bit off. So there's always this type of connection. So our mind is really like that it's a reflected sun. Now, just as the moon is the sunlight reflected off of the surface of the moon. Now, the other interesting thing is that we say that the moonlight, it comes and goes, it waxes and wanes. We have a full moon, right? And we have a new moon and everything in between. So this consciousness, it seems to grow and it seems to become less day after day. Now, if we think about it, just as moonlight is really sunlight, that there's always a full moon. Unless there's an eclipse, there's always a full moon. Only our angle is off. We don't get to see it unless there's an eclipse. We don't get to see it. If we see that there's no moon at all, that means that the full moon is completely on the opposite side of us. And it's just the angle of our vision. So this God is manifest fully within each and every individual at every second, at every moment, but we don't experience it. We experience it as, for some people, that divinity will just be a sliver, like the first day of the new moon. And for others, we'll see that full moon. You remember that nice statement that Sita said to Ravana? She said, "Oh, Ravana, you're like the full moon." And Rama, he's like the third day moon. Ravana was so happy that, oh, she's praising me, I'm like the full moon. But what she meant was, day after day, you're going to become less and less and less. And Rama's day after day is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. So this is that anubhati, that reflected light of the sun, reflected light of consciousness in the mind, which allows the mind to function. So, Tasya bhasa sarvamidam. Oh, that'll be that last line. So this is tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. So that shining, everything else shines because of that light. The individual mind takes on its own type of light. And we feel, at least we experience it that way. That I as an individual have my own individual awareness. That makes me an individual jiva. But it's borrowed light. is all, and there's only one sun. And no matter how many reflections there are, each one will be a full reflection, and the sun is not affected by any of it. If there are 10 containers, it's not like each one gets 1/10 of it, and the sun is all used up. The sun is not affected by any of it, and each one gets a full sun. We don't experience that fullness because we have our own coverings and everything, but this is that idea that tameva bhavantam, that shining, anubhati sarvam, everything else shines. So this is that one light that has to be there. It's like the source of electricity. If that source isn't there, you can flip the light switch off and on as much as you want, nothing will happen. I remember my early trips to India. They have that wonderful phenomenon called load shedding. That when I was there at one time, it was something like 8 hours a day. Yeah, where you can turn the switch on as many times as you want. There's no power source. There's nothing. So this is that power source that's always there. That connection is always there. We just have to learn how to recognize it. So anyhow, this anubhati, this explains that feeling that, yes, consciousness belongs to mind. It belongs to the mind. That the mind is illumined by that, and somehow we feel that the mind may be the source of consciousness. But it's a borrowed light, anubhati. This is the main thing. And that ultimate source is that which never changes, and that which is one. That same source for everyone. Now, the final portion of this verse is with reference to everything. Sarvamidam, we have this idea that that shining, everything shines, and everything is manifest through all of that. So we get this with this idea, sarvamidam. It's not just each individual and each individual mind, but somehow this whole creation. Vibhati, it can mean that it's shining in all its variety, or it can be that it's appearing, that this is the source of everything. So this consciousness, or the sun, we can say, is not simply illumining everything, but the source of everything as well. Now, how do we understand this? We have another nice illustration with the sun, that the light of the sun has no color. The light of the sun, or ordinary light, is it's has nothing of its own. It's absolutely pure. If it had its own color, then it would color everything. It would be like a filter. So it's invisible, we can say, but because it's invisible, it can contain with it all the possible colors of the rainbow. And we know when this invisible light passes through a prism, on the other side, it comes out all of the different colors, and all the different colors are seen by the same light. So this Brahman passing through this prism of Maya is responsible for this whole visible universe. This is the other idea that we have in the Upanishads, that all of this vibhati, sarvam, all of this will appear, or will be manifest that way. Sri Ramakrishna once spoke about a wandering sadhu. He said, once a Vedantic monk came here. He used to dance at the sight of a cloud. He would go into ecstasy of joy over a rainstorm. He would get very angry if anyone went near him when he meditated. One day I came to him while he was meditating, and that made him very cross. He discriminated constantly. Brahman alone is real, and the world is illusory. Since the appearance of diversity is due to Maya, he walked about with a prism from a chandelier in his hand. One sees different colors through the prism. In reality, there is no such thing as color. Likewise, Nothing exists in reality except Brahman, but there is an appearance of the manifold because of Maya. So what this Maya is, we can't explain, of course, but when Brahman passes through that, then it manifests as all the colors. This is a very important doctrine, that if something can manifest as all different colors and all different forms, it itself has to be colorless and formless. We have the other illustration of the vat of dye, that a man came into a village and said, tell me what color you want your cloth dyed, and I'll dye it that color. So whatever they said, if they wanted it red, he dipped it in that vat, and it came out red. Somebody wanted it yellow, dipped it in the vat, it came out yellow. Then somebody said, I want you to dye my cloth the color of the liquid in your vat. And then everyone laughs. Now, why do they all laugh? Intuitively, we understand that it can't have any color. It must be colorless. If it has any color at all, then every cloth will come out that color. So that which can manifest as any possible form has to be formless. That can manifest in any color has to have no color of its own. So this is that nature of Brahman. This is why Thakur says Brahman and Shakti. That power to manifest will be there, but the Brahman itself will be beyond all particularity, beyond all form and everything. There was a very interesting book that was written many years ago. There's a nice story about it also. Anyhow, the book was called The Color of Water. Now, it's an intriguing title, huh? The Color of Water. And it's about a African-American woman who grew up in a family where her mother, they all assumed that somehow she was very fair African-American, but it turned out that she was a Polish Jewish woman who had married into this family and taken on African-American culture completely. And it wasn't until much later that they found out their ancestry or anything like that. But they saw that she was fair in complexion and others were darker and everything. So they asked her once, what color is God? And that was her answer, the color of water. So there'll be no color, but then it can be any color that way. Now the interesting thing is that my brother-in-law used to go to a gym, and one of the instructors there got very friendly with him. And she said to him one day, are you interested in reading a nice book? So he said, sure. So she gave him the book, and he read the whole thing, and then he understood, because she was also very fair. He said, that was your mother, right? She said, yes, it was her mother. So we invited her for dinner one night and met her and everything. It was very interesting. But this idea that God is the color of water, that will have to be colorless, will have to be formless, that ultimate reality, and yet can take every form, can manifest in all possible ways. So this is that final part. We have really three aspects to this one very important verse, that this light is something transcendent. This in Brahman, it's not like any ordinary type of light, but because of that, all other, the mind can function, every other light can be seen and experienced, and this light is also responsible for this visible universe itself. Somehow, through this prism of Maya, or through this power of Shakti, Chit Shakti, to protect this universe, that everything goes back and is explained by this one Brahman, this one sun of knowledge, that appears in so many different ways. So, as I say, this is really one of the most important verses that we have, one of the most beautiful poetic verses that we have, and was the inspiration behind Swamiji's hymn of Samadhi. So it's a very nice verse. I will stop now, and I will invite Dr. Malai Das, who I can also say is a very dear friend of mine, that I've been to his home many times, and I had a wonderful meal there. And we all have a special sense of gratitude for how he looked after Swami Swahananda with so much love and devotion, and care, and was such a great supporter of him, and how his whole life is now dedicated to bringing out these books and spending all of his time remembering him. So, Dr. Das, please let me invite you here. And next Sunday, Swami Swahananda will speak on the spiritual outlook. Yeah.
Good afternoon, good morning still. Thank you, Maharaj. Actually, your talks were so beautiful. I just immersed into your talks. So now I have to recollect what I'm going to say. It was a wonderful talk. And I must thank you to Swami Atmajnananda that giving me an opportunity to discuss and say a few words about Swami Swahananda. Most of you know everything, but I'll just go really quickly from his birth to the Mahasamadhi and then just touch a little bit things. But our Swami Ji, he has contributed a tremendous amount in this book. He translated Swamiji's autobiography from Bengali to English, and he spent many months for this book. And also this is the only book that you will find that English verse of letter writing from Swami Akhandananda, Suddhananda and Premesh Maharaj to Swami Swahananda, but most of them are in Bengali. So this is another biggest thing, especially for the Western countries. They were looking forward to that. So these are the biggest, at least my editor was very pleased with that she couldn't find anywhere else about that. And I thank you, all of you, be here. So let us celebrate, rejoice, life, and legacy of Swami Swahananda one more time here in Washington, D.C. I'm sure he is here. It's no question about that. So I'll just go briefly about his birthday and then I'll say a few words. As you know, he was born on June 29th, 1921, and you'll find everything in Swamiji's autobiography, but I'll just go briefly. And a couple of months before he was born, his father passed away with a sudden heart attack. So he was born, he has never seen his father. And he talked about that many times with us when we were in retreat and spent time with us in Lake Tahoe, that he never disclosed that, but I think he missed that is the biggest miss in his life. And then naturally we have a superstition in India that when the child is born and without the father, it brings the unhappiness or the darkness in the family. So his name was given Bipad Bhanjan Goswami. Bipad means he removes all the obstacles in life. And then he was a very smart boy from the very young time, and at age 11 he started going to the Ramakrishna mission in Habiganj and was inspired by Gopesh Maharaj, Premesh Maharaj, Sadananda Maharaj. So these Maharajas, and he started writing letter to Akhandananda Maharaj, and he was the president of the order at that time, and he was supposed to initiate from him, but unfortunately by the time he came, it was not easy at that time to come from Habiganj to Belur Math. So at that time he left the body, so he was initiated by Swami Vivekananda Maharaj. So he is also a direct disciple of Bhagavan Ramakrishna Dev. But he was teached by his friends. He says, see, we told you that Vivekananda Maharaj was that time in Bangladesh close to that take the initiation, and he took, ultimately you had to take the initiation from the same our Guru. So he was smart. He says, I didn't say that I'm not going to take the Bigyan Maharaj. I wanted to take the initiation from the President Maharaj. So he used to tell us, and he used to laugh about that. And so anyway, at age 1937, he was initiated, and he continued his letter writing to Swami Akhandanandaji. And 1947, he has finished his double masters in English from Kolkata University. And then 1937, and then 1947, he joined at the Sharada Math, and that, as you know, that next to the Vedanta Mandir, Ramakrishna Mission Vedanta Mandir, and he stayed there for a year only. So 1948, that he was transferred to Chennai, and he was there 48 through 1962. And in 1952, he got the Brahmachari, and his name was given Durga Chaitanya because he was the first person, non-Brahmin, who performed the Durga Puja. And so his name was given the Durga Chaitanya. The relationship, I'll tell you, during his Mahasamadhi, why that. And he stayed there till 1962, from 1948 to 1962, and 1956 to 1962, he was the editor in Vedanta Kesari, that the famous the magazine that comes out from the Ramakrishna Math mission from Chennai. And in 1956, he received the sannyas from Shankaranandaji. And then 1968, he was transferred to Delhi Center, and that's where he became very, very famous. At the age of 41, 42, he was the first that young persons that who became the head of the centers. And at that time, next to the Belur Math, I think the Delhi Center was one of the famous centers. And he has done tremendous. There are many, many things that you can find Swamiji's in autobiography or in my book, in the first book, A Profile in Greatness. But the two most important things I must mention here, one is that he celebrated the 100th birthday of Swami Vivekanandaji, and it was a wonderful, whole 100% success. And he met at that time Jawaharlal Nehru, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, everybody. And his technique in Profile in Greatness, the first book you will see how there was a wonderful that book. But the first book, I'm not here to insist people to read the first book. Whatever written in the first book, it was the personal, his whole life journey of Swami Swahananda, his life up to the last day, because I happened to be there. It's all there. He allowed me to get the glimpse of his life. Without his dad, I had no power, because we lived in the ocean. He was a whale and I was just an ordinary fish. But this was his wish to get that. And I'm so happy with the second volume. All the reminiscences came from the greatest Swamis, greatest Swamis, 25 or 30 Swamis around India and around the world, that reminiscences, if you read, and the Bhaktas, the wonderful that why Swami Swahananda was sent into the West. So he influenced. The technique of his influence in Delhi was very different at that time. And then naturally he influenced, and one of them is the Swami Gautamanandaji, that who is the oldest vice president at Chennai. He's supposed to be the next president, was influenced by Swami Swahanandaji. Atmajnanananda, who retired from the London Center 2018, I met the Swamis. Now he's in Varanasi, and he has his reminiscences. Wonderful reminiscences, Swami Dayanandaji. Must read the last several that the advices to the Swamis and the devotees, that how to live the life. And he said that, I believe, and I just put a mark there. So several, Sanjeev Maharaj, Stuart Maharaj, many Swamis that he has his influence at that time in the Delhi. And 1968, he was transferred to San Francisco, replaced the Ashokanandaji, and then he was managing there as well as the Berkeley Center, and used to manage the Sacramento in between Berkeley, 12 to 1 lecture, and 3 o'clock he used to go to the Sacramento, then open a center in San Jose. Then 1976, after Swami Swahananda went into Mahasamadhi, he took over the whole charge of the Vedanta Society of the Southern California. And as you know, his life, he was just spreading. He established so many centers. One of them is Washington, D.C., Ridgely Manor, then San Diego, Tabuco, and so many. This is all. Plus, so many private centers actually opened by him. It's unbelievable. And I just fortunate to be part of with him from 1995. I've been 17 years, almost 7 months. It's like a glue. Because if you want to know the good sadhus that realize souls, then you have to spend the time with them at night. Unless you spend the time with them night, you really didn't know anything about the sadhus. Because that's why really and I just fortunate to be with him in the intensive care unit, not as a doctor, as a caregiver. So I saw many things, and then he started his life as is, the most important thing that his life, and he stayed till the October 12th, 2012. Then he left the body, went into Mahasamadhi, and I just happened to be with him, and everything has been described in Profile in Greatness first book. It was not just the imagination, and some of the things were talked to him. We spoke to each other even 6 weeks before his Samadhi, what is going to happen, where he's going to be. I was just discussing with the Swamis. It's a beautiful journey. Huh? And I believe, a lot of people may not agree, but Sarvadananda ji and other Swamis agreed that by realized souls, my belief that at least the 4 out of 5 or 6, he had all the qualities of those, the 4 qualities, that even at his age 91, he never smelled ammonium salt like a urine or anything. He always has the smells of the sandalwood. And you can see and meet other Swamis, you can feel that it's a very important criteria. Number 2 is the Bhakshita. Whatever he said, he did the reminiscences of Swami Swahananda ji, that he wrote beautiful about the Bhakshitas. And he used to read the mind of the people. So these are the 3rd and the 4th things that it happened with the Rishi Aurobindo too. After his passing, even on the 9th day, we went to the morgue, and when his body was taken, and we saw all the hairs were straight from here up to the elbow. So these are all from that Dr. Sarvadananda ji was there, Chidagananda ji, and we are just astonished to see that. So to be with him, to be with all of us, it was a blessing that we have received. So his life and legacy, in the sense that, and he, before his passing, even 6 weeks ago, I says, Maharaj, last minute, anything. He says, selfless service. Nothing else. The day you try to use the money from your service for your whole family, quit and retire. Otherwise, selfless service. And I have seen his selfless service, love and the detachment. It's a very difficult job, is the love and the detachment, because he lived the life of a totally divine-centric. He will talk to you, he will smile, he will talk politics, but everything is a divine-centric. I traveled with him with the Swamis at Calcutta airport, and they were giggling, smiling. As soon as I says, Maharaj, now we have to proceed. He never looked back to the Swamis, and I says, how cruel he could be. Even in Toronto I have seen, Dallas I have seen, everywhere I have seen, but it took me several years to understood and then checked with him. he was like his divine sentient sin, he used to take like a string. So any flower comes, he will strunk into that, and it becomes a big garland and the bouquet of flower, and he used to carry that with him. So how he used to love, absorb him, and leaving the outer shell, whatever the Swamiji just told us, and he left that there, and he carried that. And the beautiful that his advices in the second book you will see, and this is one of the greatest thing of Swami Swahananda, that his recommendations to the sadhus. Every sadhu will come, not he will say the same thing. Same thing with the regular devotees, disciples. According to the time, emotion, positions, everything he advises are very different and very unique, but they have the same one goal. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. This is the book that everybody should read. The part 1, part 2. It's not just the reading, just I think we should read it, we should think it, and we should meditate in with the Kathamrita, and you will see that where our journey will take. That Swamiji's lecture today, you see everything through this book, that how Maharaj practiced in his life. You can read in these books. Everything, I wouldn't take that much time, but only few things. So Swami Vivekananda told about that, and he also took one vow, because the last journey I remember that I told you about the Swamis and everything, that his lecture in Austin, and he said that I'm glad that I'm here. I probably couldn't be here if I would let. And exactly that, after 5 days or 6 days, he went into Samadhi, Mahasamadhi. And that I took a one vow in my life, that is, love God with all you have, and whatever good for you will automatically come. And that was the last letter of recommendation from Akhandanandaji to Swami Swahanandaji. And he took that vow. He says, it was not easy. It was a tough journey. I wrote briefly in the past a profile in Greatness, the first book, but I didn't disclose everything, but he disclosed that in Austin, but that we cannot share that everything. But I'm glad that I did it, because now I deserve the eternity and the life of peace. So this is how I will just conclude my brief. If you have any questions, I can go on for hours and hours and hours, but I love my Guru just for the sake of love. I am not here for any other reasons, not for my mukti, not for anything else, but just my love and homage to Swami Swahananda. Hari Om. I hope I didn't take too much time.
Our thanks to Dr. Das, and now he has agreed to sit for a while in the library bookstore, and whoever would like a copy of the book, he'll personally sign that. So we request everybody to go into the bookstore now, and then as soon as we're finished with that, we have a full lunch for everyone. So please come to the basement and join us for that.